I have always seen what others could not. At first, I thought it was just a play of light and shadow, an optical illusion. But when I bought my first professional camera, everything changed. I remember that day. I was shooting random passers-by in the park for my portfolio. Nothing special, just practicing composition and working with light. But when I got home and started reviewing the shots, I noticed it. In the photo of an elderly woman feeding pigeons, there was a strange glow around her silhouette. Not a halo from the sun, not lens flare, something else. It was as if she was surrounded by a thin glowing film. I dismissed it as a sensor defect, but the next day, while photographing on the street, I saw the same thing through the viewfinder. A man in a business suit, surrounded by a barely noticeable shimmer. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but it didn't disappear. Over time, I began to notice that not all people had this glow. Most looked ordinary, but some were different. And the more I photographed, the clearer these differences became. One day, I was shooting in a city square and noticed a woman. She stood apart from the crowd, watching children playing by the fountain. When I aimed my lens at her, I recoiled from the camera. She didn't have a glow. Her silhouette seemed blurred, as if she wasn't entirely here. Her facial features on the camera display appeared distorted, her eyes too large, her mouth stretched into an unnatural smile. I took the shot, unable to look away. When I looked at her without the camera, she appeared completely normal. An ordinary woman in her 30s. But through the lens, I saw her true self. That evening, as I reviewed the photos, I realized that my camera showed me what was hidden from normal sight. These beings, I could no longer think of them as people, disguised themselves as us. They walked among us, pretending to be us, but my camera saw through their disguise. I began documenting them, at first cautiously from a distance. I created a separate folder on my computer where I stored all the photos of these beings. I searched for patterns, trying to understand who they were and what they were doing among us. Some of them had barely noticeable differences, skin too pale, an unnatural gleam in their eyes. Others looked almost normal until they smiled. Then their teeth seemed too sharp, their smiles too wide for a human face. But there were those who looked utterly monstrous, with distorted proportions, shadows instead of eyes, skin that seemed to move on its own. I started following them. Every day I went out, searching for them in the crowd. I began to notice that they were often near people with the brightest glow, as if they were feeding on their energy. One day, I saw one of these beings in a cafe. It was sitting across from a young woman whose glow was so bright it almost blinded me through the lens. The being leaned toward her, and I noticed her glow dimming while its own grew brighter. I took several shots, unable to look away from this horrifying process. I had to do something. I couldn't just watch as these creatures fed on people. But who would believe me? I showed the photos to a friend, but he only saw ordinary people. Even in the shots where I saw distorted faces and unnatural forms, he saw only normal passers-by. I decided I needed more evidence. To get closer, I started offering free photo sessions on social media. Professional photographer looking for models to build portfolio, I wrote. Responses came almost immediately. The first was Emily, a college student. Through the lens, she looked completely normal. A bright, healthy glow surrounded her. I took several good portraits and she left happy. The second was Michael. When he walked into my improvised studio, I immediately knew he was one of them. Without the camera, he looked like an ordinary guy. A bit pale maybe, but nothing unusual. But through the lens, his face was like a mask stretched over something entirely inhuman. I stayed calm, pretending everything was fine. I photographed him, directing the light to highlight his true nature. With each shot, his disguise grew thinner. In the final frame, I saw him as he truly was. A being with eyes like black holes and skin that moved as if insects crawled beneath it. "Great shots," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Wanna take a look?" He approached the monitor and I showed him the photos. But on the screen, he looked completely normal. No distortions, no signs of his true nature. "Looks great," he said, smiling. His teeth seemed too sharp, even without the camera. "When will they be ready?" "I'll email them to you in a couple of days," I replied. "Just need to do some color correction." After he left, I stared at the photos for a long time. On the computer screen, he looked normal. But when I printed the shots, his true nature was revealed in all its horror. I added these photos to my growing collection of evidence. With each new session, I grew bolder. I started choosing locations with fewer people. Abandoned buildings, deserted parks on the outskirts of the city. I told my models I was looking for a special atmosphere, unique settings. Jessica was the third. Through the lens, her skin appeared translucent, revealing not bones and muscles, but something resembling clockwork. Gears and springs moving in perfect rhythm. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked when I spent too long adjusting the camera, unable to tear my eyes away from the sight. "Just finding the best angle," I replied. "You have a very interesting facial structure." She smiled, and I saw the gears under her skin spin faster. After that shoot, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, thinking about all these beings living among us. How many were there? What were they doing here? Did they know I could see their true selves? I began noticing them everywhere. The cashier at the supermarket, the mailman, the neighbor down the hall. They were everywhere, watching, waiting. Sometimes I felt they looked at me differently, as if they suspected I knew their secret. I decided it was time to act. I couldn't just collect evidence forever. The world needed to know the truth. I chose Alex for my plan. He responded to my ad for a free photo session, and through the lens, I immediately saw he was one of the most dangerous. His true form was so distorted I could barely look at him through the camera. I arranged to meet at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. "The light and atmosphere there are amazing," I told him. "Perfect for an artistic shoot." He agreed without hesitation. On the day of the shoot, I arrived early to prepare. I set up the lights, adjusted the camera on a tripod, and I prepared what I hoped would be my proof for the world. When Alex arrived, I started the shoot as usual. Directed him, asked him to turn, smile. With each shot, I guided him closer to the center of the room, where the light was brightest. "Now let's try something more dramatic," I said, pulling out a mirror. "A large one, in an antique frame. Stand here and look at yourself." He stepped up to the mirror and I stepped back, raising the camera. Through the viewfinder, I saw his true face, distorted, inhuman. But in the mirror, he looked like an ordinary person, a young man with a slight smile, a bit embarrassed by the photographer's unusual request. I lowered the camera, confused. Why didn't the mirror show his true self? Why could only my camera see the truth? "Is something wrong?" Alex asked, turning to me. I raised the camera again, and through the lens I saw him, a creature with a distorted face and eyes full of darkness. But when I lowered the camera, there stood an ordinary man. "Everything's fine," I said, feeling my plan unravel. "Let's take a few more shots." I continued the shoot, but my mind raced. If the mirror showed him as human, did that mean he really was human? Was my camera lying? Or was the mirror part of their disguise too? After the shoot, I sent Alex home, saying I'd send the photos later. As soon as he left, I reviewed the shots. In every one, he looked like a monster, distorted, inhuman. I printed the best shots and laid them out on the table next to photos of other beings I'd captured. All of them looked inhuman through my camera. But all of them reflected in mirrors as ordinary people. What if I'd been wrong all along? What if they weren't the monsters? What if I was the one seeing the world distorted through my camera? I remembered all the people I'd thought were beings. Ordinary people who just wanted their photos taken. People I lured to secluded places, planning, what? To expose them? Or something worse? I looked at my hands. They looked normal. Human hands. But what did others see when they looked at me? A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I went to the door, unsure of what to expect. 2 police officers stood on the threshold. "Are you James Carter?" one of them asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "We've received several complaints from people you photographed. They say you behaved strangely, said disturbing things. One person claimed you threatened him. I didn't remember threatening anyone. But what if I had? What if my obsession with beings had gone too far?" "We'd like to ask you a few questions," the officer continued. "May we come in?" I stepped aside, letting them in. My eyes fell on the table, where the photos were spread out, distorted faces, inhuman forms, evidence of my madness. One of the officers picked up a photo. "What's this?" he asked. holding up a shot of Alex, his face distorted beyond recognition. "They're photographs," I said, not knowing what else to say. "Is this some kind of Photoshop?" the other officer asked, examining the other shots. "They look strange." I didn't answer. What could I say? That my camera revealed people's true nature? That I thought I was exposing monsters? But I was the monster myself? "Sir, you'll need to come with us," the first officer said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We have some questions about your activities." I nodded, knowing I had no choice. As they led me to the car, I cast one last glance at my apartment, at the window where my camera sat. The camera that had shown me the truth, or a lie. I wasn't sure anymore. At the station, they questioned me for hours. I told them everything about the glow, the beings, my mission to expose them. They listened with stony faces, occasionally exchanging glances. Eventually, they sent me for a psychiatric evaluation. The diagnosis was quick and clear: paranoid schizophrenia with delusions of persecution. Now I'm here in this clinic. They took my camera, of course. They say it's part of my therapy, to let go of the tool of delusion. They give me pills that are supposed to clear my perception. Sometimes I think they're right, that it was all just the product of my sick imagination, that there are no beings disguised as humans. But sometimes when the light falls a certain way, I see them even without the camera. The nurse with the too wide smile. The doctor whose movements seem slightly mechanical. The patient whose eyes reflect too much light. And I wonder, what if my camera really did show the truth? What if they found me and locked me up so I couldn't expose them? Or maybe the truth is even scarier. Maybe I really am one of them. A monster who doesn't know he's a monster. Every day I look at my reflection in the window of my room, trying to see my true nature. But without the camera, I see only an ordinary man with frightened eyes. And I wait. I wait for them to come for me, or for the moment I finally understand who I really am.